as a writer who's on social media, you usually get asked questions from time to time by other authors or aspiring authors about your writing methods. And one of the questions I got asked the other day was, do I plot out my and they were talking specifically about the Half Dead series. So have I plotted it all out? Do I know where the series is going, etc, etc? Because it's going to be a fairly long running series. I've mentioned the fact that I'm writing more this year and more next year. So the way that I do it, my method is that I do very little kind of plotting when it comes to writing my novels. I'll do kind of a very basic outline. I don't do any kind of character biographies or anything like that. I'll do little bits and bobs, but just to kind of get my kind of mind working, because I think if they kind of stilts your creativity process, you've got it already worked out rigidly in a plan, then you've got no room there for your kind of characters to do their own thing. So what happened with the Half Dead is, so I've currently got the 4 books out. So there was like a trilogy and then there was like a prequel. So the way I wrote the Half Dead, it really illustrates like my writing process. So the first book was supposed to be just one book, and it was based on a film script that I'd written. I was a filmmaker in a previous life, and I'd written this script which was meant to be made very low budget. It was very contained, self-contained, very few characters, and I expanded it a little bit for the novel. When I was writing that novel, I got the idea of expanding it, what would happen to the characters after this particular storyline was going on. And so then I developed a couple of further stories, very brief outlines again. And as I was writing book 2, I didn't think it was long enough, so I kind of invented another storyline which was supposed to be flashbacks with Deb, who's the elder sister of Harriet, who was one of the main characters in the first 3, and she's a virologist. So I had flashbacks to her in the lab and her working with the virus, etc, etc. But then that became a bit bigger than what I thought it was going to be. I then finished book 2 and I thought, well, I'll put all of these flashback elements into book 3. So I started doing book 3, and then I got stuck kind of halfway through book 3, and so I went off and I thought, well, I'll write all of the flashback stuff for Deb and the virologist, and she was working in a lab, etc, etc. But then Deb's story became a thing of its own, really. It became this bigger beast, and I thought, well, it's too big for to kind of just be little kind of flashback elements in book 3. So then I put that aside and I finished working on book 3, got that done, and then I went back to Deb's story and I thrashed that one out, and then I created the prequel, book 4. So I knew I had to continue the character stories because it didn't really come to a conclusion at all. So I then drew up plans for, I knew the characters were going to be split up. So I thought I might do independent kind of books for all those particular characters. So I ended up planning the next 12 books following different characters. Like I say, very kind of brief outlines. And now I'm writing the next 3, and we're supposed to be following one particular character, Paula, and then I was going to write another 3 with kind of one book for 3 other separate characters. It was Matthew, Harriet and Deb as well. But then as I was writing these 3, I was pulling in elements of the other 3's kind of stories, which I was going to do kind of separate stories for. So then I combined those 6 books into 3, which I'm currently writing at the moment. So those, what was intended to be 6 kind of novellas are now developed into 3 novels. And the plan next year is to write another 6 books, 3 novellas following one particular character and 3 novellas following another character, which will then kind of leave all of the main characters with a story, but the story's kind of hanging. And then the plan after that is to write either another trilogy or a big kind of epic book to finish it all off. But I haven't, and this is the thing, I haven't planned it to the very end, so I don't know what the ending of the series is going to be. I've got some little ideas, but I've got nothing written down as I'm kind of going along with this particular story at the moment. The story is really evolving. The Half Dead, or there's some elements of the Half Dead which I'm introducing, and there's going to be like a new threat which wasn't planned for before. It's just something that came into my mind, and I thought, oh, that's a good kind of twist in the story, which is then going to affect all of the other books that are planned. So that planning is now kind of going to go out the window, but not fully. So I'll have to adjust those storylines. I think for me the best way is to just have a loose plot, kind of know the direction that you're going to go, but let the characters dictate, and I think you get like a better storyline rather than like kind of forcing the characters to do something specific that may not be as interesting for the reader. Because if you're just letting the characters do their thing and they dictate where the plot line's going to go, story elements and all that kind of stuff, then I think it ends up a better read, a better story for the readers.